the Ritz. I mean, he's what's up with that? I saw somebody post a photo of like the VIP suite in Windsor Palace, and they posted that as being similar to their kid's dorm, the way they've dressed it up. It's what, 40, 50 grand now to outfit a dorm.
Whereas we were making chairs out of pizza boxes.
That's exactly right. Cinder blocks and warped wood. Right, like 1x12s or something to make
you take the closet doors off so you have some wood to make a shelf out of.
We got Spence Flatgard. He is chairman of Ballot Access Mississippi, the leadership board there. Spence, always good to see you, sir. How you doing?
Yes, thank you for having me back, Gerard. Thank you.
So, a little background about the ballot measure. We've talked about it extensively here on the program. It's one of those issues that gets, I'd say, more engagement on our text line than anything. People seem to support reinstating the ballot measure process. That's, of course, the mechanism where citizens can collect signatures and present that to the Secretary of State. Some bill, meet all the various requirements. That gets stuck on a ballot. I believe in the next statewide election, we go to the polls. And if we vote for that, presently in Mississippi, that would amend the Constitution. We don't have a mechanism just to make statute, except there's one little bitty problem. We don't got before congressional districts, and the Constitution specifies that the signatures have to be collected from 5. And the Supreme Court sought fit to reject Initiative 65, right, that would have created a medical marijuana program which would have been inserted in and enshrined in our Constitution. So a little background there. Bottom line is we don't have a mechanism right now.
That's right. That's a good summary of it. Don't have a mechanism. We have the right. It's in the Constitution. It says that that's a right reserved to the people for Mississippians. The right is there, but the mechanism isn't there. And in terms of background, so we got to fix it, and that's what Ballot Access Mississippi's trying to do and help with that conversation this election year. So thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
In terms of background, a lot of folks don't realize it started as a Governor Fordyce in his administration. They pushed it in his first term, and it's been around for 30 years. Mississippians voted on it, and you're right. I'm not surprised that you get a lot of texts and emails on it. Mississippians, it's a right that they cherish. We all know Mississippians like to vote on things. Tuesday, I kind of forgot we vote on the surveyor for the county.
Yeah.
And the coroner.
Right.
We like to vote. And we like to vote on everything down if we could, so that's good. And it's our Constitution. It's not anybody insider's Constitution. It's Mississippians' Constitution. So we like to have the ability to vote to amend it. It's ours. So trying to bring that back through this new group that we're launching today, and wanted to do it on your show. So thanks for
launching it today.
Yes, just an hour ago we went live with our website ballotaccessmississippi.org, and just wanted to announce it on your show. You've got a great platform statewide and listeners that are engaged, and honored to do it now. Got a great group of local leaders and business leaders from around the state, and we're going to start today.
You do. I'm just looking. You serve as the chair.
Yes.
Brickley Miller, vice chair, former board president for Oktibbeha County. George Flaggs, the mayor of Vicksburg, also on your board. Shane Aguirre, Mississippi House of Representative from Lee County. And then Renee Lambert, I know Renee well, Madison County GOP chairman. Mm-hmm. Dr. Jim Perkins, business owner and veterinarian in Tishomingo County. Billy Mother.
Yeah.
A very successful businessman and a very successful family, of course, very famous family in the state of Mississippi. Chief Executive Officer, TriStar Acquisition Corp. Rebecca Powers, President of Harrison County Board of Supervisors. Wow, you've got a great, diverse group that represents all corners of the state. I'm sure that was intentional and well done there.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited about this board, and that's just today. We're launching it today.
Okay.
We're going to add many more people. We've had a lot of inquiries. Austin Barber's going to be on it. I enjoyed listening to his brother Henry on your show yesterday, recapping the election. So, it's going to be a good group of local leaders, business leaders. We want this to be a grassroots initiative around the state, and we want to be a forum. People are for this, But there's a lot of good ideas out there. We want to be a forum to have it be a part of the conversation with the elections, and also get all the good ideas people have and kind of put them together as we head in the next legislative session and kind of tee it up and get it across the goal line. It's been brought up the last 2 sessions, but just hadn't made it. And so we're going to try to help get it across the goal line.
Yeah. So the challenge, of course, as you know, is that the House passed a bill that they transmitted over to the Senate, and it did not get any traction there. And the main objection was on the number of signatures required to get a measure on the ballot. The House wanted to keep that the way it is provided for presently in our Constitution, which is 12% of all those who voted for the governor, or the number who voted for the governor in the most recent election. That would come out presently to about 105,000 or so. And then it went over to the Senate, and at first they wanted 12% of the registered voters, which would be some 240,000. They backed down to that to 12%. It was 8 versus 12. That's where I'm wrong. It was then to 12% of those who voted in the last election. The House's was 8%, as I recall. So, that was like 140-something thousand, some 40,000 difference in the number of signatures. And the House said, no, we're not on board with that. So we don't got anything, is the bottom line.
That's right. And then you know how it goes in legislative sessions. The House and Senate probably disagreeing on other things over here, and everybody's kind of tired of each other by the end of the session and ready to go campaign, and it just
falls off the radar.
It's fell off the radar. So we don't want that to happen this time. And there's been a lot of, on both sides of the House and Senate interest in this and in the number. And I'm not sure what the magic number is. I know you talked about it with Governor Hoseman at the Neshoba County Fair, and he might have said a number like 8% of the total number of voters, which, so we're open to anything. It doesn't need to be too high where the average voter is overwhelmed and can't do a voter initiative. Doesn't need to be too high. I'm not sure what the magic number is, but we'll get there. The main thing, I think, is everybody's for it. Let's just figure out the details and give Mississippians their right back to amend their Constitution.
Well, you got some in the legislature. I talked about this, Spence, before you came on, that just completely oppose any sort of ballot measure process. Senator Polk, it was assigned to his committee, the bill, and he came out, and we read his quotes on the program before, where he said, I believe, and I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but not a direct quote, I believe that members of our legislature make themselves accessible to their constituents. They just need to call them and talk to them about their needs, their concerns, and let us handle that. We don't need a full-blown ballot initiative process where the citizens could get something on the ballot and essentially affect it into law. That was his position.
I certainly respect Senator Polk. Most legislators are for it.
Okay.
And, honestly, all legislators take an oath to the Constitution, and the Constitution says it's a right reserved to the people. So it's really not, in my view, people ask my view of whether to have it or not, and I say it's not really, my opinion doesn't matter. It's in the Constitution that it's a right reserved to the people. So how do we, as you start out the program saying, how do we effectuate this? How do we fix it? And that was what the Supreme Court said was, there's a right there. We had 5 congressmen, and then we had 4, and so you can't collect signatures from 5 congressional districts. So it can't be – it's an absurd result to say, we had a constitutional right one day, but not the next. So it can't be contingent on the number of congressmen. You either have a constitutional right or you don't. So let's just fix it. Most people want that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't really thought about that angle. We got about a minute left, and then we'll catch it on the other side of the break. I haven't thought about that angle that, hey, it's in our Constitution. So as an attorney, Spence, why hasn't somebody mounted a lawsuit and said, hey, I have the right as a citizen to redress my government through a constitutionally provided ballot measure process? You guys aren't in adherence with the Constitution. Get that through the Supreme Court of Mississippi and say, hey, legislature, I want a ballot measure by X.
Yeah. Good question that comes up. It costs a lot of money to file a lawsuit.
I know it does.
And so what we're going to do is say, look, we don't want litigation and tied up in the courts. Let's just go through the legislature that is for it and have something that works for everybody.
Let's continue this discussion on the other side of the break. Spence Flatgard, Chairman, Ballot Access Mississippi, just launched today right here on the program. Everyone, it is middays. We are in the Element Wealth studio with Spence Flatgard, Chairman of Ballot Access Mississippi. And the mission of this organization is to revive the ballot measure process here in the state of Mississippi. So you give me something to think about with, hey, it's in the Constitution. That means it is our right enshrined therein. So that's kind of weird. I was just telling you offline, yesterday I was looking for something in the state Constitution, in the most recent draft of it, published at the Secretary of State's website, dated 2022, it actually includes a section for medical marijuana, Article 16. And it also shows all of the sections of the medical marijuana bill, but not the text for each section. Rather, there are 2 paragraphs slightly below that are just labeled as note in all caps, note, colon. And the first note basically says, yeah, we had a ballot initiative process, and it was approved, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, we had a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court case essentially turned it down, rejected it, in those 2 short paragraphs. But it's like it got ready to put the whole bill in the Constitution, because that's what we would have done had it not been rejected by the Supreme Court. But it now stops short of that, just has the sections and their numbers, their respective numbers, and then these 2 paragraphs kind of explaining what happened. So I guess the thing that struck me about it, Spence, is that a lot of people said, and I'm kind of with them, you don't want a medical marijuana bill in our Constitution. And it was lengthy. You don't want that. But we actually have medical marijuana, the words, in our Constitution.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Pull back to you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for telling me that. I didn't know that. And for that reason, and I heard that some people said, well, certain things we are for, but we don't want it in the Constitution.
Yeah,
so
sure.
A neat idea that's come up, in the House and Senate is let's have another process too, where you can propose a general law and a bill. And have a voter initiative process that way, which I think is good and interesting. And you maybe have a lower signature threshold to get on the ballot because it's not in the Constitution. Still make it hard, but I think that would get a lot of traction.
That's an interesting idea. So you and I were talking offline. It is my personal belief that there are 3 major issues that are kind of just teed up that I think would get to the ballot should we reinstate the ballot measure process, the ballot initiative process. And that's Medicaid expansion, extended access to abortion. And you heard me talking about what's happening in Ohio. Kansas, had a similar measure where they were voting on access to abortion. They have a 22-week ban, it turns out. So more folks in Kansas do support more extended access to abortion. We have a much stricter law here, and only in a couple of cases, endangerment to the mother, I believe, and rape, will we allow an abortion in the state of Mississippi. And then the other one is recreational marijuana. I just believe that all 3 of those, having seen some privately conducted polls, would pass.
Well, I guess I'll disagree with you. I'm not as good at political prognostication, but I can look at history.
Sure.
So we had the ballot process for 30 years since Governor Fordyce brought it to us in 1992, and it's pretty hard, first of all, to get on the ballot. I think 76 times initiatives started, and maybe 7 times in 30 years it got on the ballot. And on those 7 times, 3 times the voters voted to amend the Constitution. And those were conservative things. There really wasn't a liberal, amendment that passed. So we had voter ID, the Republican Party pushed. Yep. Eminent domain, Farm Bureau pushed on property rights, and I would argue medical marijuana wasn't ideological. It was 74% Republican, Democrat. So there really wasn't. I don't think Mississippi voters would. They're informed. I don't think they would pass something to go backwards on abortion. We've been leaders on that. I just don't think that would pass.
Okay,
I agree to disagree on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think I shared it with you. My theory on that is that virtually all Democrats would support it, because this wouldn't be like a primary where you're all voting for the same party, and that's would peel off 40%. You need 1 in 5 Republicans to put it over the finish line.
And that might be where we disagree. One of the areas I don't think all Democrats. There's a lot of more pro-life Democrats than
It could be. In Mississippi, I think that could be.
I think it's culturally in Mississippi. I just don't think we go backwards.
You
on
may be
abortion.
right. And there's no way to tell till we put that out there.
That's true. And also, the legislature's talked about maybe having a caveat on not having an abortion vote.
I've seen that too.
Yeah. So that could happen. So I'm not really worried. I'm pro-life. I'm not worried.
And by the way, I don't oppose. I support reinstating it. I don't oppose it because I believe that those three issues would likely pass. And look, it's just an opinion. I don't have any proof of that. It's just an extrapolated, informed opinion.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to think about because that is where you go, well, what if we had the process? What could, you start prognosticating, and it's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think something else I've heard voters talk about is term limits.
Mm-hmm.
They'd like to see that. They would like to see, and I don't know, honestly, is that stipulated in our Constitution or is that statute? I'm not actually sure. I'd have to review that.
Yeah, me too. Didn't it, that was brought up and I think failed.
Well, what we had was a resolution to join the Convention of States, which is an effort across the country. States would join on two matters. One is a balanced budget. The other is term limits. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't for state, I don't believe. It was for federal offices, mainly Congress, House, and Senate. And you're right. In the state of Mississippi, we did join the convention on a balanced budget amendment. We did not on federal term limits. I actually wrote a fairly extensive article to that effect.
Okay.
And Alan West, the Colonel, Alan West, came to Mississippi the day that the legislature was voting on that. And I had my photo made with him down at the Capitol because he had read my article and supported it.
Yeah.
And but unfortunately, it failed.
Yeah,
so,
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Okay. Oh, Initiative 30 from 2010. That is right. Thank you, Rhino. Reminds us would have put term limits on the ballot in Mississippi. So that means then it is in the Constitution, right? Because at that point we could only amend the Constitution. So. Under this scenario, if we get a ballot measure back, the only chance we have of implementing term limits in Mississippi would be for the legislature to refer a measure to the ballot, and that would require a 60% vote, I believe, of both chambers. I think maybe 2/3.
Maybe 2/3.
3/5 on. That's right. It's 60% on revenue matters. It's 2/3 on non-revenue matters. This would be a non-revenue matter. Would then have to go to the ballot because we cannot amend the Constitution without the people ratifying it at the ballot.
That's right.
So that's the only way we get term limits. It's not likely that the legislature would vote themselves out of a term.
Based on history, I'd say that's true. And to your point on amending the Constitution, as we go forward with this effort to bring back, fix the problem and restore the ballot initiative process, the legislature would have to pass that by 2/3, and then the voters would vote on it.
That's right.
And undoubtedly approve that. I guess in the next presidential election in 2024, it'd be on the ballot.
That's right. It would be the next time we would have a statewide election.
Yeah.
Which is how we do that.
So that'd be a big turnout election, the presidential. So that it would pass overwhelmingly. So,
I think so. And thanks for bringing that up because there is a lot of confusion on that process out there because this is in our Constitution. That would have to be referred by the legislature. Would require 2/3. Does not have to be signed by the governor. It's a resolution, and because of that. It just gets referred to the ballot, sent over to the Secretary of State. They stick it on the ballot. We go to the polls and vote for it. And if we approve it with simple majority, then, we'd have a ballot measure process.
That's right. And Mississippians would have their constitutional right back, and then they could decide whether to, have an initiative on any issue they wanted to. And as I've said, there's been a lot of them over the years, and it's pretty hard to get them on the ballot and even harder to get them approved. But that's what it's wonderful. It gets people engaged in their democracy and Constitution, and so it's a good thing. We need to bring it back.
And you make a good point that besides these sort of three more current issues that I point out that I think would at least make their way to the ballot, you don't know what could happen in the future, and you want to have this thing in your back pocket just as a protection mechanism potentially to do something that the people don't approve of. They may want to reverse something the legislature did, or they may want to implement something they just won't act on. That's the whole purpose of this deal.
That's right. I mean, the eminent domain provision, that was, I think, a U.S. Supreme Court case that was to the left, And Mississippians didn't like it, and we had a process, and Farm Bureau led it to preserve folks' property rights, and it happened. And didn't have a crystal ball for that. I think that'll happen, but that's the magic of democracy, and people are innovative and would use it.
Spence, I know you know a lot about this. We only got about a minute left, but this is kind of a counter to the strong lobby community in our state to some extent, because they have the ear, as you know, and influence more in the legislature than the average person out there does.
That's right. This is an outsider game. This isn't an insider's game. And so it gives power to the people, which we're all for.
Spence Flatgard, chairman of the newly formed Ballot Access Mississippi, trying to reinstate Mississippi's ballot initiative process. Appreciate it, Spence.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. We're coming right back. Half an hour left in the Element Wealth studio.